everyone. Thank you for joining us for our session this afternoon. Today we're welcoming Pat Horgan, IBM Canada Limited. Pat leads business operations for IBM Canada, including CIO, supply chain, real estate, procurement, corporate citizenship, and government programs. In addition, he provides leadership to the IBM Software Lab organization and the microelectronic manufacturing plant in Bromont, Quebec. Both of these are the largest of their kind in Canada, holding world mandates. Pat participates on many boards, including the 2013 chair of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and also on the boards for Canadian Council of Aboriginal Business, the Ontario Brain Institute, NRC Emerging Technologies, SSHRC, and Research Matters. Before we begin, I ask that you please hold your questions until the end for the question and answer period. We welcome your questions for Pat at the microphones, which are located in the middle of the floors. So at the moment, please help me to welcome Pat to the stage.
Thanks, Michelle. Well, thanks very much. And I'll promise, because it's the second day in the afternoon, to make things a little bit lively here if I can. So if I have a bunch of charts, I'm going to make it look like a movie behind me and talk about it. But a couple of things that I'm going to do today that I've been asked to sort of look at in terms of partnerships and the way that we can build out entrepreneurship in the province. The two examples you'll see, and in fact, I'm in a great spot here. I see my own company's logo right in front of me, which makes me feel good, but I see the word of big data and analytics, which is also a little bit of the theme here, and a lot of great entrepreneurs that are a part of our partnership are right outside the theater. So as soon as you leave here, if you want proof, just go out there, and I was accosted by one of them just before, and I said, I have to go to join this session. So let's see what I can do in 20 minutes. And I'm going to do this, which is the R&D Center, the partnership that we talked about. And it's really called the Southern Ontario Smart Computing and Innovation Platform. That was coined by universities, we have to say, from IBM, because we're sort of famous for acronyms. But this was a name that SOCIP came from the university sector. So. And then I'm going to talk about cybersecurity. I know there was a panel this morning, but we have a point of view that I'd like to share. So here we go. Before I get into the partnership, you probably all know about IBM, but you may not know about IBM in Canada. So I'm taking the opportunity here to give you a few facts. We are the third largest R&D company in Canada across all sectors. And we have been for a number of years. So one thing that people aren't aware of is that we have a big footprint for research and development in Canada. From IBM. We do a lot of export and import, of course. A few years ago, the last time that we actually, Corporate Knights ranked a corporate citizenship winner, and now they put it in categories of 15. We're in the 15, but last time they named a number one, IBM Canada was named number one. We're very, very proud of that. And then just last week, we took the award once again from the Randstad group, who did a little bit of analytics on their own, 8,500 prospective employers, free to look at the top 200 companies across Canada, and they ranked IBM in the top 5. We were tied for number 2, which Bombardier and ourselves were tied, and WestJet was number 1. But we're in a good place. We're the only company in the 4 years they've run the survey that have shown up in the top 5. That's very important to us and keeping that brand alive in front of new folks. And we can talk about the Aboriginal efforts that we're doing. We're one of the 10 companies that are par gold in the country. Our employees are very big give back people, so we're very proud of that as well. But what we're here to talk about is big data. And big data, if you were to think about big data, it's either the cause of the common cold or it's the cure for the common cold, and it depends on which side of the glass half empty, half full you're thinking. But for us at IBM, it's part of our DNA. It is big data, and data is the new natural resource. We believe that because it applies across sectors and across disciplines. And really, the best way to get underneath this big data, besides looking at the different sources, social media, the mobile computing, the Internet of Things, or the cloud and the enablement community, is to actually get to understanding how you can make sense of it. If you just looked at one of the dimensions of big data, volume, you can see here that this is a scale from 2010 to 2015. The "we are here" could even be moved a little bit to the right. You can see the exponential scale that's going on. If you thought that, the coined term is that all of humanity's information was doubled again in the last 2 years. Some use 2 weeks, depends on your scaling. You can see that it's going incredibly fast and coming at us incredibly quickly across all dimensions. The interesting thing is the red line that you'll see in there is uncertain data. So it's not just that it's in rows and columns, it's coming from all kinds of different sources, and that is what makes the issue interesting. From IBM's perspective, it's not just volume. There are 5 V's to big data. So volume is one, and it's coming off the scale that we're talking about from all the different sources. Because it comes from all kinds of different sources, it's not in a translatable form in one sense. It's got a lot of variety. It's coming quickly. So think of a river passing by you quickly. If you said the best thing to do here to analyze it is to stop the river, and let me just check it out here for a bit, and then I'll let it go again, not the answer that you need. You have to think about streaming data, and you have to think about how to analyze streaming data. And then the two things on the edge, veracity and vulnerability. Veracity, gee, just because it's on the internet, is it real? And there's lots of examples where that's not true. And phishing is one of the best ways of getting behind, no, I am your bank, I'm sending you an email, just give me this information. Of course, shouldn't do that, right? Just be careful. And we'll talk about vulnerability in the second part of my pitch. So analytics itself, and it's what's important in terms of discerning answers and patterns and predicting the future, which is what analytics is all about. Just from the skills perspective, from the jobs of the future perspective, those terms that we hear coined all the time. McKinsey just last year stated that the US faces a shortage of 140,000 to 190,000 jobs today. Open jobs today in analytics that just aren't being filled. And if we're the 10% quantity, and I think we're a lot smarter than that in Canada, so we're probably 15 to 20%, think of the number of open jobs today if we had analytics capability, if you had analytics capability. And the number here is growing by 20% per year for the next 5 years. So this is a skill set that we think is important to look at. So when you ask some questions about, well, what if I could understand customer value a lot better? What if I could figure out fraud? What if I could anticipate financial decisions? And I see the financial associations here with us, so this is for you, Matt. Or if you're a student, what kind of curriculum would you need in order to learn some of the skills of the future? And by the way, it goes from social sciences all the way to engineering science. It's something that can cut across all disciplines, understanding patterns. So what did we think when we were pulling together this partnership? We actually said to ourselves, look, we've got a global mandate and we've got an opportunity here to build an ecosystem here in Canada. And I was talking to some of the organizers. We've been using a lot of Silicon Valley examples, which is really why we have SOCIP. We could invest the money in an emerging geography or in the US and Silicon Valley. Or why don't we actually use some of the great assets we have here in Ontario and build and lead from here? And so that was really what we were thinking at IBM, that we would take some of the corporate money, invest it here in Ontario, and really start to lead some of the big solutions and the big dimensions here from Ontario. So across the dimensions of health, energy, water, and cities, big dimensions, big areas where we could solve some big problems. Across the bottom, you'll see all the 7 universities that are in the partnership. Large universities that are all around us: U of T, Western Waterloo, UOIT, Queen's, McMaster, and the University of Ottawa. And of course, the Ontario Centres of Excellence. How could I miss? But both the Ontario Centres of Excellence and the province and the feds got together on this thing. I will point out at the bottom, $210 million was committed, 175 of which from IBM. So we did the lion's share of this. We decided we're going to put this platform in place. And actually, one of the biggest points here, it's open. So when you bring a project into this space, as these folks are doing here in the zone, we want them to be successful, and we want them to become the millionaires of the future, which I hope they all do. So we put in the largest supercomputer in the country, the largest analytics cloud in the world. We started to put together agile research as well, which is another way of looking at the computing. And then we started to put the partnerships together with academia, with researchers themselves, and with business, and really looking at trying to make this commercializable in very short order. So there's a board of directors and a scientific advisory council, and they are putting this thing in motion. And frankly, we're just one of the votes out of 12 on each of the boards. And what has happened 2 years later, we just had our anniversary. You can see me doing this like a movie. Can you tell how quickly we're going here? So 2 years later, on April 10th, 2014, 42 projects have been launched. And we did it in 3 ways very quickly. We got out of the chute very quickly on this thing while putting the governance in place. Healthcare, there's 18. Energy, there's 8. Water, there's 5. In cities, there's 4. And there's cross-pollination of some of these things in the computing models. And you can see a good distribution across the different universities that were involved and the platforms they're using. A few examples. Real-time analysis of human brain networks. So Mark Daly and his team at Western are putting people in the Robarts MRI and looking at real-time mapping brain patterns of what they're thinking and looking at healthy brains, projecting what they could do against brains that are affected by some neurodisorder. By the way, Mark was the first to put himself in the MRI in his new device and frankly moved his ability to measure and predict what's going on with neuro tracking orders of magnitude. What he used to do in the past was take a picture, take another picture. It would be weeks in between, and then he would hope that he could come up with some kind of a connection between the two. He's now doing it real time, and he's doing it in ways I saw him this year versus last year. The scale of what they're doing is unbelievable. And I say that from listening to a lot of Brain Institute discoveries as well. I could go through the rest, but you can see there's smart meter, data analytics, water quality. These are huge signature grand challenge problems that these people are trying to solve, and they're doing it at scale. And that's what I think is really interesting about the Silicon Valley versus Ontario. We have the ability here to come together with first-of-a-kind kinds of projects that can really start new industries and create an ecosystem from Ontario that leads the rest of the world. I'll show you one example that we use because we're so proud of Carolyn McGregor, who's a scientist who came to Canada working at Sick Kids. She's a UOIT prof, and she actually is working with a Sick Kids hospital at their neonatal unit and is predicting sepsis 24 hours before it presents, something that was never done before. And what she was doing it off of these, you see the bottom picture, all of the devices that are attached to a neonate. If you actually brought forward the cases where you saw a sepsis child, you would be able to understand what the ingredients are in terms of blood and oxygen levels that could be changed and that never presents. Happening at Sick Kids, first in the world for all of IBM. By the way, it became a Super Bowl commercial for us last year. And we're so proud of what they're doing here, that this is going to China now and around the world. And she has, in fact, I think this is Analytics in Motion right over here, right? And you'll see it if you want to. So, scorecard. And the province wanted us to keep the scorecard. So if you're here from the government, thank you very much. Wendy Tilford, I saw, was here, and Bill Mantell. And 42 projects was far above what we were expecting at this stage. 30 SMEs. In fact, Claudia, who was here in the back of the room, oh, there she is. You told me last month that this could be 40 by now. So, you know, that's how the kind of scale is that this thing is starting to really grow. And so we'll have that kind of future. We were supposed to put 145 new jobs. I'd say we put in more, we already have recorded more than 400 new jobs. And in fact, if we added up the 46 projects that are now out there, there's more than 1,000 people working in this new environment at the highest level of R&D. And you know, we're looking at now growing. This thing's going to continue till 2018, and we're looking at a phase 2. In the phase 2, in fact, at our anniversary event, we announced 4 new members: York University, Ryerson, Carleton, and Laurier. And more to come because there's people who are making application to join. And in fact, some of these universities have already put in their first projects. So very interesting. We've added 4 new areas as well: digital media, advanced manufacturing, mining, and cybersecurity, which I'm going to do. That's why I'm going quickly. I'm going to show you a little bit about cybersecurity from our perspective. And the interesting thing is that we didn't stop in Ontario because we started to figure that we are playing a catalyst role for this. And we have a corporation. I'm very proud to be part of an organization that thinks that collaborative innovation is the way to go, even if you're not getting revenue from it. Even if you're not getting revenue from it in the short term. So what we're here to do is put the platform out there in an open IP way so that people can join, can learn, can be on a world-class platform, and can win the world right from here in Canada. So Nova Scotia, we've got a project similar to this one. In Quebec, it's on microelectronics and nanotechnology. We just announced an Ocean Networks project in BC, so you can see us. It's almost unbelievable to me that we have the ability to continue to do these things, but more to come. Okay, cybersecurity. Time check. I'm doing okay. I am. So here we go. Cybersecurity, the movie. One more thing. You're going to hear about analytics a bit more, but now we're going to talk about cybersecurity in the way that you may not have heard from some of the panel, and I'm sorry I missed it, but I'm going to give you a point of view here. What is the motivation behind attacks these days? Well, it started from the hackers, and it moved to, well, I could make some money off this if I could just work my way into somebody's network. And we're now seeing that there's a lot of state-sponsored security issues. And so you have to actually look at the sophistication going on here and decide, what are you going to do? We tracked this. This is a 2012 map. I picked it out because you can see here the attack type and the size. And we tracked this by month across 2012. And actually, that was bigger, but here's 2011 is on the left, 2012, which you just saw, is in the middle, 2013 on the right. And you can see the size and scale of the attacks that are going on across the dimensions. 61% of organizations say this is the highest priority for them. The new number for average US breach cost by the organization that's doing this, cost of cybercrime, is now $9.4 million per attack. The number of security execs that are concerned about this, especially in cloud and mobile computing, which is where a lot of the new entrants are coming for cybersecurity. And look at the middle bottom there. 155% increase in 2011 on mobile attacks. 614% increase on malware from 2012 to 2013. So look, you can't get the skill you need, and there's tons and tons of apps out there that can help you, right? So here's why we think you need a new approach. If you look at the infrastructure that we traditionally have seen, it's a data center approach. Got to look at that. Well, maybe look at my PCs and make sure that I get my mobile devices, my laptops. Well, okay, what about those smart PDAs? What about the cloud? And what about new technology like cars and trucks and RFID tags on systems out here? Well, okay, then the application layer, the data layer, the people layer. My people aren't just my own employees. They're actually outsourcers. Some of them are actually not good people. Some are consultants. I give them access. My customers want to get in here. It's structured, it's unstructured. It's coming through all kind of different layers. And you have to actually be aware of some of this in order to be able to protect yourself. People are using off-the-shelf bots. I had an ethical hacking team that were the best. I had them for the last 10 years in my staff, and they've moved to the security services at corporate. They're still Canadian, of course. But they could break into anything. And so we were very proud of them because if they could break into our stuff, they could break into anybody else's stuff. And they found ways that you can get in that people educated us on how others are doing it. But the real thing is there's targeted, and they're actually going after not just corporations. I'll have you know, if you're an interesting person here in the audience, you may be the next, right? Because they are looking at interesting individuals, not just corporations. We have 5 stages to this attack, not just the perimeter break-in. It's all the way to latching on to certain information and expanding in your network, gathering that information, and then exfiltrating it. And by the way, the average length of time from break-in to gather to exfiltrate, 1.1 years. Sometimes these folks are inside your network for 4 years, gathering up just the right amount of information so they can exfiltrate it. Okay, I've put a puzzle in front of you. How can we solve it? Well, I'll say IBM. Of course, I'm here from IBM. But one of the things you may not know about IBM is that we are one of the leaders here. We're actually number 2 or 3, depending on consulting services, are actually performing the solutions. So we think you've got to look at this in analytics form. It isn't just about your perimeter defense. You actually have to look at controls and robust controls across all of those different dimensions and apply insights. Learn as you're going, because this is a real-time phenomenon, and you've got to add this to your arsenal. And I could have done a lot of what were we doing before and what are we doing now. What we were doing before is a lot of the things that we would have heard from others, which is, okay, well, make sure you're really checking all your logs and looking for anything that looks different in your events. In fact, we have to look all the way through at the analytics layer to your whole organization and be able to look at real-time monitoring so that you can solve for things that are happening. So our approach is have a defense for each one of these stages. So I'm just flashing. This is the movie part, right? But actually use analytics to integrate everything. So the whole point here is an integrated layer with analytics to look at your enterprise across all of these dimensions to be able to solve it. And if you do that right, you can now start to look at this integration and see where the tough spots are, the most sensitive parts of your organization, the most critical pieces to miss, and be able to solve for it. And so monitor everything, your traffic flows, correlate intelligently, detect anomalies. So if I've gone to the wrong place when I'm doing something, track that I've gone to something really weird. What is Pat doing over there? As he's not usually there. Just as I'm looking at websites or whatever I'm doing within the network, and we can look at that, and then correlate all the dots, and then make sure that you're taking action. And I say that we're good because of the depth of knowledge that we bring to this thing, and so we have a lot of the facility to do this, and frankly, we're proud of it. So this is why cybersecurity is one of the new 4 areas that we're looking at, and we'll bring our expertise and add it to yours as we come back to the SOCIP point. And last piece, you can email me if you can't read the numbers here, but if you have a problem, call the number here and they'll help you. And they'll also look at hardening your future. So that was Cybersecurity, the movie. Of course, I could have done that a lot longer, but I just want to get the point across. So my final thing is bringing it back to SOCIP. We are striving to improve this innovation scorecard in the country. And it is something that we were looking to build an ecosystem, and I think we've gotten a first step of doing that in a great way. And with the help of OCE, we've been able to build on something that builds us into using world-class platform and be able to drive success that goes global right away. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and I'll take questions. So thank you. Yes, sir.
You've spoken very highly about the quality of people available to IBM here, and Cisco's done the same thing. My question is, I looked at the growth chart you gave early on, the
Yes.
growth of sensors and other external devices. What is the quality of our infrastructure to handle this next wave of the internet? How do we stand in ability to actually, with speed and capacity and all these things? How would you rate that?
Well, actually, it's a twofold answer to the question. So I agree with you that as you expand, as with anything, there's lots of expansion that takes place that may not be of the highest quality. There may just be a presence out there, and so this is where some of the issues and why I decided today to bring in the cybersecurity point. It's like anything. You do some e-commerce, everybody does, but if you're doing it with a provider that you're not sure about, it's shame on you, right? So there is, and there are a lot of choices that you can be making these days that are not as secure as others. So I'll just leave that as a point. However, there are a lot of people that are now building that secure interface, building ubiquitous computing at the level that you can be more assured that it's happening in the right way. And so that's why I'd say look to what the banks are using, and you'll find some of the better people to secure your future.
My question was really about the
People?
capacity of our broadband systems, the internet, the networks, and speed and quality. And do we have the capacity to competitively handle this great growth of what they call the Internet of Everything, of all these sensor devices, cloud computing? What's the status of our basic infrastructure?
Okay. Now is this a broadband kind of question? Yeah. And so I have, and Karen over here we have been working diligently to say we should have more broadband. And of course, I guess the way I look at it is you need to have the application layer and the two going at the same time. It's a little bit like Mr. Bland. It's a yes answer to your question. We need better broadband. We need better access. We need better access everywhere. At the same time, we need better content. If we were just waiting for the roads to be built, and that would be the future, we'd wake up and be behind, and we'd have this fantastically built roadway and nothing to drive because everything's being driven somewhere else, right? So I think the two go hand in hand, and in fact, what we're finding is as we build what we've just described here in our partnership model with a lot of leadership projects, you're getting more reasons to invest in the broadband layer, in that infrastructure layer. So it's not good enough. It's only good enough for certain types of computing, but when you get into using a lot of what we used on the growth scale there, the video and real-time things and looking at each other, you'd have to be making sure you're in a secure place, right? Now, we have the benefit here of we're in the universities, right? So they've got a great network with Orion and Canary and the like. But as we get into the commercial side, you have to be careful, and you have to start to make your choices that way. That's a good question. Thank you. Any other questions, thoughts? Michelle might. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, hi. How are you?
Hey, good to see you, Pat.
Good to see you too.
How important is it to be able to track the source of cyber problems nationally or internationally, and how does that impact the Canadian economy?
Yes. Am I being videoed here? I guess I am. So I'll answer carefully. You do track back to the source, of course. You're trying to find out what's going on and where and how. There are certain locations that are now becoming more and more known as the source, so I'll just leave it at that. And does that create some issues with international trade, which I think, Lloyd, is your question, and I think, of course, it does. And yet, on the other side of it, it is also, look, you've got to decide how you're going to play in a global economy. And so, for my point is protect yourself and play in the global economy. By the way, if we change this over to other kinds of, if it wasn't cyber terrorism and it was other kinds of terrorism, we'd have a different answer, and we do. But I guess I would say at the level that we're talking about here and trying to come up with better solutions and play in the global economy, I would just say protect yourself extensively and work with people that you can trust. And you have your own choices, by the way, on how you, as a company or an investor or a person, how you make your choices. But it is a global economy. Hope that answers that. Any other questions, thoughts? Michelle, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Actually, my question revolves around the SOCIP example you gave earlier, and where you've managed to collaborate with all those universities. For the people in the audience, can you talk a little bit about how startup companies, entrepreneurs, universities can approach IBM?
Sure.
What's the best way to get that started?
Yeah, so that was interesting how this evolved. We were sure that good, excellent research starts commercialization in business. Yet, it doesn't happen all by itself. So what we were able to do is actually add criteria to a successful project to say, are you collaborative? Do you have a commercialization prospect? And who are your business partners? And what kind of SME are you working with? Is there a possibility for commercialization? And we add OCE in behind here to track this independently to make sure that we're doing it for real. And secondly, have those sort of resources necessary to teach people how to move to commercialization. So whether it be through the financing channels or even how to bolster their IP so that they can go commercial on their own. And so that has been one of the things that we've moved into. As a first layer, it was let's get started with the best things that we think are going to win. Now we're into a stage where they're becoming very successful. They're getting a lot of help on this rapid evolution of, we call it agile development at IBM, but that's the kind of mentoring that people are getting as they're going through their projects. And now they're getting to a point where we're starting to launch these businesses. And I think we're getting great help from OCE to do that and others, and we're able to start now thinking about that layer. So how do businesses come to us now? I'd say we have opened up. Look for the next time that we're going out for proposals, number one. So get to some of the OCE, we can get it to the OCE people, or you can come to any of the people in the SOCIP layer. And actually you can wait for that or get together with one of the universities and come up with a great proposal and try to work together with them. And by the way, when you come to a project, I should say that the 42 projects, I see Steve Timms here, there's 22 postdoctorate fellows. So as you get to your project and you need a research department to be full-time on your project, we also hire the postdoctorate fellow to be your research department full-time. So, and then we add some mentoring behind the scenes from our research to help. And all of this is so that you can become profitable and successful, right? So I think with those ingredients, we're going to be successful, and we're encouraging more participation, frankly. So that's why I say more to come, more to come. There's a lot more to come. And so I'd encourage you to think about framing your solution in a big data way, and you'll find a way in to solve this on a world scale.
Thank you. So with that, I think I'll close off the question and answer session. I'm sure a number of you want to continue your conversations with Pat, so hopefully we can grab you at the end of this. From my perspective, I think it's interesting, when you think about the world the way it is today, the problems that we're facing are bigger. They're bigger, they're more complex, they're uglier. So the health problems, political problems, security problems, And when you are trying to solve those, you can't solve them the way we did 50 years ago. So it's encouraging to know that with all the smart minds that are in Ontario and across Canada, we also have smart companies like IBM Canada who are supporting us with the infrastructure and the power and knowledge around things like big data and analytics to figure out what to do with some of those problems. So Pat, on behalf of OCE, thank you very much for joining us today, and I'd like to leave you with a small token before you leave. Thank you.